Hello, welcome to yesterday's Airlines. I am back from a short holiday in Crete. And while I was away, JC Wings announced their November releases. And so that is what we're going to be looking at ranking in this video. JC have had a pretty mediocre year, I think. Each of their release sets contains a lot of relatively generic models, often very similar to previous releases, but also they do slip out the odd interesting model here and there. So amongst what are usually around the 20 to 25 mark in terms of the number of models, there's usually 3 or 4 which stoke some interest, and the rest of them are pretty ordinary, and that kind of continues this month as well. Now I speak with JC a bit, and so I know that they've got more interesting models coming. I know that they have recently started ramping up their 400 scale production, and they have been choosing new models for production. And from what I've seen, there is a lot more diversity coming and a lot more interesting models, at least models that I consider to be interesting. So I think that the near future of JC looks pretty interesting, and you're likely to see a wider usage of their molds on maybe more classics here and there, but also some re-releases of stuff that they made a long time ago you can't really find anymore, and also just, a better range. So there's hope for JC. Now this month we've got 20 models, but I'm only going to rank 19 of them because one of them I actually talked about last month because it was announced separately after the last announcements before I did the video, and that was the UDF flight test, the unducted fan flight test 727-100, which is exactly the kind of awesome model which JC have the potential to put out but don't necessarily do so often. So I've already ranked that one as supersonic in the last vid, so I don't need to rank it again here. So in this one we'll be ranking the other 19 models, and we'll be doing that in a second. But before I get to that, as always, chuck a like on the video if you're enjoying it, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I go through pretty much all the releases and rank them and give you some feedback information about them. So there's a lot of content that I'm producing in that space. I also do lots of other stuff as well, new molds and all that kind of stuff. So subscribe to the channel and check me out at Yesterday Airlines on Instagram and Facebook, and of course yesterdaysairlines.com. Always lots going on there, including at least one detailed model review every week, and this week it was a Phoenix Caledonian A320, which wasn't the best model, but nonetheless is sitting quite nicely in my UK charter area, and as I say, lots of other content there. But let's get on. JC's November releases, here they come. So it actually is quite a diverse set from JC Wings this month. We've got 16 models which are going to be released soon, and then there's 3 future releases I'll talk at the end. Of the 16 models, there's quite a good mix of Airbus, Boeing, and then other types. So we're going to start with the Airbuses as always. There's only actually 3 of them this month, and the first one up is a Spirit Airlines A320neo, which has got a special scheme on it advertising Spirit Untamed, which is a kids movie from a couple of years back, one that passed me by completely. I believe it's like almost a sequel, but not quite a sequel, to Spirit Stallion or the Cimarron or something, an older release. My kid's too old nowadays to care about these kind of movies. Anyway, the reg of the aircraft N932 November Kilo. It's a Neo, and so that's always going to bring some problems, and this one, to be honest, doesn't look that great. I don't know if it's just because it's bright yellow, but it really accentuates the engines are oversized. It's not doing a lot for me in terms of the look and feel. It's pretty ordinary looking. I'm going to put this one just down into gas guzzler, I think. That's not unusual, to be fair, for these A321s and A320neos that come from JC. They often look very poor. Sometimes they can look okay, but this one really, is not looking that great to me. And to be honest, it's a bit of a lackluster special scheme too. So not doing much for me. You'd have to be pretty hardcore, I think, to care about that model. Next up, we've got another Condor A321. This is a CEO. It's wearing the blue version of the scheme. D80 Charlie Foxtrot is the reg of the aircraft. They've made a few of these schemes recently. They made the green version, pardon me, and they made the red version too. I mean, so they've made quite a few of them. To be honest, they're pretty ordinary, and it doesn't help that NG models have made all three of those on their own molds, and it was only last year that they did so. So these are a little bit superfluous, and again, you know, even though the mold is it's very ordinary, it doesn't stand up too well to the NG version. And I'm not entirely sure either about the cockpit printing that's going on these Condor ones. It just looks a little low and misplaced, which doesn't help the overall look of the model either. I'm going to put that one in gas guzzler as well, because it has been released much better recently. Now the third Airbus is another A321. This one's a Neo as well, so you might think I'm going to gas guzzle this one too, but actually I don't think I will. This one is Arkia, the Israeli charter airline, and they've got a variety of colourful A321s. This is the third one that's been produced by JC Wings. They've already made two others. They made the one with the orange and red tones, and they made the one with the pinky tones. This one is got this darky blue tone. This is 4XA Golf November. Yeah, I could easily gas guzzle this in terms of the mould, but to be fair to JC, this one's looking not too bad. It is a nice scheme, and nobody else is making these. Aeroclassics did make AGH, the pink one, in 2020, but otherwise, nobody else has been making these. It's interesting that both of the other JC Wings versions came out in 2022, so it's been a couple of years wait to get this third version, though it was advertised on the box that it would be coming, so it's not a big surprise. I'm going to put this one just into Workhorse, I think. If I was an Israeli collector, I think that I probably would be getting it. I can't see anyone else making it, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, can't put everything in gas guzzler, can we? Okay, cool. So that is the Airbuses out the way very quickly, and we're moving straight on to some Boeings, and we start with a 737-300. This is in the colours of Lufthansa. It's in the cheat line scheme from the 80s, the delivery scheme. It's got the 1988, in fact 1986, sorry, official airline of the European Championships. It's the same scheme that was actually made by Miniature Models in 2022 on the much better Panda Models 737-300. So again, this one actually, when you compare the two side by side, it does illustrate the weaknesses of the JC Wing 733, which is a mold I'm not against getting, but nonetheless does not necessarily always look great. It's often, as in this case, got a bit of a nose up stance to it, and it just, you know, the cockpit printing isn't particularly great, and the engines aren't, you know, it's just, overall it's just not fabulous. I mean, I've got quite a lot of models on this mold, and they don't bother me, but if there's competition from the Panda version, you know this one is going to be inferior. I'm just going to Workhorse that one. Next up, we've got a 737-400, ostensibly using the same mold, just slightly stretched, and this one is HSTDL, Thai Airways International. It's in the old colours. It's got some kind of figure on the door. I can't quite make out what it represents. It's not, it's one of those things. It's not really a special scheme. It's just slightly different. They made a very similar version of this in 2023, but that one had the King's 72nd celebration titles on it. If you're really a hardcore Thai collector, then I guess this might interest you. But there have actually been an incredible 13 versions of Thai 737-400s from different schemes, both the old and the new, and a mix of manufacturers. And once again, Miniature Models has made this in the original scheme on their Panda version of that mold, and it looks much better. Not that this one looks that bad, and it doesn't have as bad a nose up aspect as the Lufthansa I was just looking at, but again, it's just a workhorse. I can overthink these things too much sometimes. Next up is a Boeing C-40, the military version of the 737-700, and this is the fourth one of these that JC Wings has made in US Navy colours. They've made 2 in 2022, and now it's 2 this year as well. They're all subtly different, but not dramatically so. This one hasn't got winglets, has got a side cargo door. The mould is what's off-puts me here. It just isn't very good for a 73G. I have to say it's not a good mould at all. It's a mould that I almost sometimes feel like gas guzzling, but I think I'll probably just put this in Workhorse as well, to be honest. It's inoffensive, but it's not good. The scheme isn't particularly exciting either, and I mean none of these US Navy schemes are, but yeah, it's not great at all, really. And it's actually very, very similar to the one they released earlier in the year, the Sunseekers version. So we're getting into a lot of Workhorse, and to be honest, this theme continues at least for the rest of the Boeings here. Next up is an Air China Cargo 747-200. Again, this is very reminiscent of models they've been making recently. They made B2446. That was released in August. That just had Air China titles. This one has got Air China Cargo titles, and that's the primary difference. B2448 is the registration. It's the old Big Bird mould. It looks pretty good, but it's very dated. It's a model I consider getting, but it's not enormously high on my list, I have to say, and it is very similar to the one that they made just a couple of months ago, just for those cargo tiles. There are also older versions made by Aeroclassics, which will be very hard to find, but probably look effectively the same. Yeah, just a Workhorse again, really, to be honest. It's almost sneaking into high fly, but it's not. The next model is kind of similar in a sense in terms of the ranking. It's another 747-8 of Cargolux. It's not unique. LXV Charlie Charlie is the registration. It's got the 50th anniversary titles on it, so it reads as Car 50 Lux. And it's been made before. It's been made by Phoenix in 2020. It was also made as an interactive version by JC in 2020. This is not interactive, and so that's the difference here. And it could well be the best of those three versions, but I'm struggling to get excited by it. There have been so many of these Cargolux 747-8s, and it is not doing that much for me. Does anyone collect Cargolux? It's an interesting question. I mean, I always get the feeling cargo carriers sell less well than passenger airliners. There are a lot of Cargolux releases. Is there anyone out there buying all of these Cargolux releases and getting a Cargolux fleet? I'd be interested to know. Drop a comment if you do collect Cargolux, but I'd be surprised if there were that many people who had 4 or 5 Cargolux 747s in their collection. Okay, moving on, we've got a couple of 777s. First one is in the colours Etihad. It comes flaps up and flaps down. This one's got 2015 Formula 1 titles on it, which is not very interesting as special schemes go. It's just some titling on the back of the fuselage. There have been quite a few of these titling on the back of the fuselage releases by JC. For example, they did a Fast and the Furious one last year, and in 2022 they did the standard scheme, which didn't have any titles on the back. So there have been a few Etihad 777s. In fact, if you look across the list of all Etihad 777s, there have been 16 releases overall, which perhaps isn't as many as you might think. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what to say. It's a nice scheme, the Etihad scheme, and it's a good mould. And flaps up, flap down's cool, and all of that. But, you know, it's very similar to the previous 2 releases, and I'm going to work also. And the last Boeing of the month is another cargo 777, but this one is on the interactive 777 mould. This one is DALFI. It's got the cargo humancare.com titles. If it feels familiar, that's because it has been made by NG, though it was a couple of years ago now that they did make this. And obviously the difference here is that this one is interactive. Though the mould is excellent, it is not quite... Yeah, I don't know actually. Maybe that's harsh. I think they're both really nice moulds. But it's not, again, it's not exciting. And again, there have been quite a few of these Lufthansa Cargo's 777s, and just like for cargo, I can't believe there's anyone out there buying all these Lufthansa Cargo 777 freighters, and there have been 16 different models now from different companies, and maybe some of them are the same aircraft, but there are lots of different versions. And how many people are really buying all of these? I don't know, but anyway, I'm going to workhorse it again. It's fine, it's fine, and I like the interactive series, but it's not exciting me at all. So that brings us to the end of the Boeing releases for this month. So we're up to 10 models, and we haven't scored anything higher than a workhorse in this video, which is disappointing and unusual. But you'll be glad to know that things do improve quite a bit from here on in, because we've got 5 regional aircraft releases this month, which is, you know, one of those real strength areas for JC Wings, where they've got the molds and they're pretty good. So we're going to start off with an area which they're quite fond of, which is Japan. We've got a Japan Air Commuter ATR 42600. The registration is JA07JC. And this is the 3rd Japan Air Commuter ATR that has been made, but it is the first one, I believe, which is in just the standard scheme, without anything else on it. Now, the scheme isn't... the scheme kind of barely exists, because it's copying Japan Airlines. But it looks nice. And although there are a lot of special schemes made, you always feel that collectors really are keen on standard schemes. And yeah, there hasn't been one of these for a couple of years, and this is the first time I believe it's in the standard scheme. I'm going to put this one up into High Flyer, I think. Maybe he's very generous of me, but I think this is unique. You know, no one else has made it, and that really does help out. Now, next up is something that is really unique, because it's an Antonov 26. JC released their first Antonov 26 in June of last year. The mould now has been used 5 times, once by Gemini, 4 by JC Wings. And this 4th version here is quite colourful for an Antonov 26. Again, I'm not overly familiar with the liveries. This is another Ukrainian Air Force example. In fact, 3 of the JC releases have been Ukrainian Air Force. This is probably the most attractive one yet. It's in this rescue service scheme, and it's very pretty. I've got to say that the mould is excellent. I've reviewed it at the site. If you haven't seen it in close up, then that's a good way to do that. Really attractive, really interesting. Like to see more Antonov 26s. I would really like to see an Antonov 24 mould. But this is a really nice release, and I think excellent choice. But still a little bit obscure maybe to get supersonic. I want this one up in High Flyer as well. I think it's a really good release. But it's one that I'm not entirely sure I'm going to get. It doesn't really fit in any of my collection criterias. So I'm going to High Flyer that, I think. Now, another area that JC have been working on quite a bit this year is Dash 8s, and there have been very few Dash 8 releases in the scale. I'm not talking about Q400s here, I'm talking about the shorter Dash 8s. In fact, there have only been 14 before this release, so that's 15 in total, which is a tiny number considering the mould has been around since 2009. And this one is the 3rd in less than a year that represents one of the house colours Dash 8s. We've already had Dash 8 100, we have the Q200, and this one is the Series 200 before they got the Q200 upgrades. Very similar scheme in a sense to the Dash 8 100, but a bit more attractive, bit more colour, bigger titles. Again, looks really nice. I'm not entirely certain enough, I think I've said this before, about the cockpit windows on these Dash 8s, but this model, of all the ones we've looked at so far, is probably the model which I'm most likely to purchase. I think it's a really nice choice. And I think I'll put this one again in the High Flyer. It's not quite supersonicing for me. I am concerned about the cockpit windows still. But yeah, happy to put that one in the High Flyer. Now we do move on to a stretch Dash 8 next, and this one's a Q400. So we've got another Japanese version, and there have been quite a few Japanese Q400s that have been made. In fact, this is the 10th, though not all of those have been made by JC Wings. At least 4 have been made by Diagostini or Jet Hut, or for that JAL collection set of magazines. This one, JA858 Alpha, is wearing this eco-friendly green scheme, which looks really good on the model. Really liking the look of this, and it's actually really nice that JC are getting these photos out early nowadays, and you can actually see the model that you're going to be buying. So it's easy when I look at do these to look at them and go, oh, they've done a good job there. They actually announced the Demon Slayer version of the All Nippon or the ANA Wings scheme. That was only a couple of months ago, so this is the second in only 3 months for ANA Wings. But they go nicely together, that pair, and this scheme being green has a very different look to it. I really like it. Way outside my collection criteria, but I can see that it's a really nice model. And one of the other good things is, looking at the pictures, the nose gear isn't too high. Some of those recent Gemini releases, the nose gear's just been like God knows where, and the aeroplane kind of looks like the front is on stilts. But this one's looking excellent. Pictures here look great. Another high flyer, I think. The last turboprop of the month is a China Southern Shorts 360. This one's registered B3605. This is a JC re-release of the YU model version, which was released in September. So it is effectively an international release of the China-only model that YU made. I'm interested to see whether they do the same with the other YU props that have come out recently. There was a China Eastern Shorts as well, for example. They probably will. Again, pictures look great. Really nice little model. I've already got the original JC Wings Shorts 360, which this one basically is the same as. That was made in 2010 and is a nice little model, so I don't feel the need to get this, and I'd have probably got the YU version if I was going to get it anyway. But nice model nonetheless. However, because it's been made and this is just a re-release of the YU version, I'm going to put this one down into Workhorse. Now, the last model of the month of the already made releases is a Tristar, but obviously don't get too excited because the JC Tristar mold is pretty ordinary, or at least the undercarriage is too short. This one's another Dragonair VRHOD. I think it's actually a re-release of the model that was made last year in a twin set with another Dragonair Tristar. This one's got the old scheme, the old nice orangey red cheat line scheme, which has been made also by Aero Classics and NG models. There is a slight difference in terms of the scheme. This one has a Union Jack next to the titles. I think that is the only difference between that and the other two versions. So yeah, it's fine, but it's not spectacular. And I actually think maybe even that JC did release this in 2020 as well, so it's probably even a re-release of that one. I'm talking about it too much. It's clearly a Workhorse model, so happy to put that down there too. So that is all of the to be released soon models. Obviously, as I said, they've got that Supersonic 727, which I talked about last month, so that can't go in the set again. And that means there's not a lot happening in the high flyer space, but we do have that nice selection of turboprops, which I think really are the best models in this set. There are 3 future models to talk about, and we shall do that now. They're a kind of mixed bag, actually. The first one up is probably the least interesting. It's an Air Asia X A330-300 9M X-ray uniform, and it's in the colours of, well, it's in a special scheme, a Sonic the Hedgehog special scheme. I can hear your excitement. I presume this is associated with, is it a sequel, a Sonic the Hedgehog movie sequel? I'm not sure. Coming out. It covers a lot of space. If I'm trying to be positive about it, on the fuselage, the special scheme does. It's colourful, but hey, it's Sonic the Hedgehog. This is one step up from Pokemon, maybe one step down from Pokemon. I don't know. It's not doing anything for me. I'm just gonna workhorse it, especially because the JC A330 not the best. Next up, we've got an A321. This one is looking quite nice from the pictures. I didn't realise Azul had a cargo area of the business, and they've got an A321 P to F here. PSAJA is the registration. Looks really nice, this scheme. Got the light blue and the dark blue halves and the map on the tail. Classy. I like this. However, it's obviously going to be on the JC mould, which is, yeah, average. And I would be surprised if this is a new aircraft, which it looks like it is, or at least a new conversion, that I'd be surprised if it doesn't get made by somebody else, to be honest. I'd be surprised if NG don't slip it out. It's exactly the sort of model I'd expect them to produce. So, yeah, I'm going to workhorse this one as well, though I do like the livery. And the last model up is something which is unusual in terms of being a future release, because it's not a new aircraft. It is, in fact, one that's just going out of service. It's an Icelandair 757-300 TF FIX, wearing the previous Icelandair livery, which is a classy livery. Looks nice, and I probably prefer to the current one. There have been a few Icelandair 757-300s historically, but not lots. In fact, this aircraft was made and has been made previously, but without winglets. It was made for Gemini, and there was a Schuko release, and that was 2003, so 21 years ago the last time this was made, and that was before the aircraft was fitted with the winglets. So yeah, I think this will be really nice. The Gemini JC 757-300, perfectly decent mould, obviously not as good as the NG, and in that respect you might think NG might produce this, but NG, I don't know what's going on there, so you can't count your chickens. I'm going to put this one up in the high flyer. Kind of classic. Love a 757, attractive scheme, hasn't been made for 21 years and never exactly this version of it, so there's reason to think this will be a really good model. Okay, and that is my roundup of the JC Wings releases or announcements for November. It's another pretty ordinary month from JC, but as I said at the start of the vid, there's a lot of hope and there's going to be a lot more interesting and diverse models coming in the future. There's always some good stuff here, and I think that the props are very strong. And, you know, if you're a fleet builder type collector, then perhaps you'll find some joy in acquiring things like the Arkia and the Spirit, and even the Thai 737-400, which have minor differences to previous models and the Etihad, I guess. But if you're just a standard collector who collects one or two aircraft from each airline, then I can't believe you're going to be rushing out to buy that Spirit special scheme A320 or the Condor Blue A321, which has been made better elsewhere already. I mean, and that's kind of the problem with these kind of release sets. In a sense, you're hedging your bets in terms of the production as a manufacturer, but unless your molds are really up to snuff, someone else is likely to beat you to it if you're spreading them across the time. And some of the special schemes just, just don't need to be made. There are so many special liveries out there nowadays. It's getting to the point where you look through these release sets and half of the models are wearing some form of special scheme. And it's a little bit much, when you can't get a standard colours Finnair A320 or something like that. When you're getting, 5 special scheme Thai 737-400s, it's a bit weird. Anyway, that's it for this month. Hope you enjoyed the video. I think NG have just slipped out their hints, so there will be an announcement video coming up for them in the next little while, presumably. But until then, that's it from me. Goodbye.